Hi guys, Miss Nikki here. Somebody was asking me about cellular respiration, and there's a question. I want to say it's chapter 3, something about explain the difference between aerobic and anaerobic cellular respiration. So you'll see me abbreviate cellular respiration like this so I don't have to write it out all the time. Really, this information, they mention it briefly in chapter 3 in the textbook, but you can also go to chapter 9. There's some information there. We're going to come back to this in this class. And then also chapter 24 gives a little bit more detail around page 925. I'm going to try to explain it to you with the next 2 slides, just kind of what you need to know right now at this point in anatomy and physiology. Hopefully you've seen me talk about cellular respiration in the videos. You've seen me write out this equation. Glucose plus oxygen is broken down into carbon dioxide plus water plus energy stored in the bonds of ATP. So this is what we're looking at when we say cellular respiration. How do we break down glucose with the presence of oxygen and turn it into the ATP energy that we need to do work inside the body, right? These are the byproducts, carbon dioxide and water. All right, let's go to the next image. Okay, here we go. We are looking at our first image that we're going to look at cellular respiration. You can see here that we have aerobic, and I have this giant bracket. So aerobic means with oxygen. So then what do you think anaerobic means? Without oxygen. Technically air, but oxygen is what we breathe, right? So you can see here, this is the cytoplasm. This is the mitochondrion. This, they're trying to show you, you have mitochondrion in both animal and plant cells. Remember that this is the powerhouse. They call it the powerhouse of the cell. Because what is it going to do? It's going to generate most of the ATP, not all, but most of the ATP, which the body is going to use to do work, to move things, right? So if we're looking at aerobic pathway, there are 4 steps. Here's glycolysis, here's a prep, here's citric acid, here's electron transport chain. There's 4 steps in order to take all of this. We're saying we're taking glucose, and the end result is we're trying to create energy from that sugar, right? So we take glucose, we break it apart, and all of this first step happens out in the cytoplasm, and it does not require oxygen. So they call this the anaerobic pathway. You break down glucose, it's the very first step, and you make 2 ATPs. So you're making a tiny little bit of ATP. The next step, when we go to preparatory reactions, citric acid and electron transport chain, you must have oxygen. So this is called the aerobic pathway. So basically, if you don't have oxygen, these 3 steps are not going to produce the amount of ATP that you need. You're not going to follow through with steps 2, 3, and 4. Here you can see the numbers change. Instead of 2 ATP, we're making tons of ATP, 32 to 34. Right? And then you actually get an extra 2 ATPs from this step here. So you can see that's a big difference. That's 34 to 36 ATPs from the mitochondria in the presence of oxygen. So if you have present oxygen, you're going to finish cellular respiration and you're going to get 34 to 36 ATPs. If you do not have oxygen, so no oxygen, you're just going to do this first part and you're going to make 2 ATPs. Here's another image that I like showing you cellular respiration, and it shows in a little bit more detail. So here's the oxygen molecules. They're going to come in and they have to be present here at the end of this pathway. So remember here are the 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the breakdown of glucose to make ATP or cellular respiration. So you have to have these oxygen molecules present They have to act as electron acceptors. If you don't understand what that means, you can read about it. It's not necessary for this exam. It'll come up later. But you need the oxygen present or this system backs up and it won't happen. You won't get these ATPs. So here's the oxygen. It goes to the very end of the cycle. Here's the glucose being transported across your phospholipid bilayer into your cytoplasm where glycolysis happens. We take a glucose, we break it down into another substance, and then we push that substance into the mitochondria to make tons of ATP. So what do I want you to understand for the exam? I want you to be able to tell me that glucose is broken down in the cytoplasm without oxygen, and we call that anaerobic respiration. If oxygen is present, so with oxygen present, we're going to do all 4 steps and we're going to produce 34 to 36 ATPs from 1 glucose molecule. So which one do you think is better? Well, obviously it would be better to make 36 ATPs than to just make a measly little 2. So we want to do cellular respiration with oxygen, which we call aerobic respiration. There are times that our body does anaerobic. It's almost like I just need to hang on for a little while until my breathing catches up. So if you're a runner, you'll do this. You will cycle between doing aerobic and anaerobic respiration depending on how deeply you're breathing. If you are a runner, you know that point where you're sucking wind, right? You're taking those deep gulps, right? You're like, right? What is your body trying to do? It's trying to get more oxygen, probably because you're in this anaerobic respiration. It's a temporary. The reason that this is not so great is that if you're only doing anaerobic, you produce something called lactic acid, and lactic acid can build up. Makes your muscles not work as well, as efficiently, can also make you a little bit sore. So hopefully I've kind of brought a little more clarity to aerobic versus anaerobic. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll talk more about this in detail when we get to chapter 9 in muscle contraction.